Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Hoss. See these things right here? These eggs are the hottest speculative asset in all of the marketplace here in 2023. In fact, I feel like if on January 1st you went all in on eggs versus if you went all in on hot speculative comic books, your egg portfolio would be doing a lot better than all of the worthless stuff you see behind my head. That is right. It is official. Swaggle Hoss Comics and Games is now rebranding to Swaggle Hoss Eggs and Breakfast, because eggs and breakfast is a more important thing to have here in 2023. I'm going to have to work my way up. Obviously, as you guys can see, I can only afford the 6-pack because apparently at Trader Joe's, the egg shortage prevents them from getting in 12 packs in the grocery store. But that is how hot of an asset this thing is here in this current calendar year. So in this video, I wanted to talk about that idea of eggs versus comic books and how tough choices are going to need to be made here in this current market. Eggs. And I think what I really want to dig into as I kind of do a little bit of a market rambling video here for you guys is to talk about this idea of market attention. You know, it's one of those things where I think about, obviously comic book prices have been going down in this particular year because people need to make choices between these necessities, eggs. And I think one of the issues with that is not so much, that people don't still want these particular comic books. It's that, the market's view of what they can tunnel on at any given moment in time is really the thing that is affecting a lot of those prices. Serpent Society. This one is definitely going to take me to the moon. So I think that's something that is really interesting to think about, where, now in 2021 and 2022, the market had eyes everywhere. It was like one of those lizards, that just had the little eyeballs that can go, horizontal. And I think now you're seeing a lot more not only churn amongst comic book collectors, but people can only focus on one particular book at any given day at any particular moment in time. And I think that is something that is actually kind of a return to where the market was before, when we had some kind of tentpole movie coming out that was moving, the comic book market at that particular moment in time. But when we think about what was going on in these last couple of years, I mean, everything was moving based on speculation. Everyone had eyeballs everywhere. And I think we might actually be returning eventually, maybe not now, maybe not quite with Ant-Man, although some of the Ant-Man books seem to be the ones that are at least having the most momentum right now. But what I think what we might be returning to is a moment where later on in the market, we actually start to get eyeballs pointed to whatever movie or show is once again out going on. I mean, I think that is something that could be a return to form in a way, because there's always going to be a pool of money in the market, right? There's always going to be a certain amount of liquidity, and that ball of money is always shifting in any given day, whether it's to Amazing Spider-Man M&M, #1 spotlight variants, or it's moving to, gold foil Superman variants, or it's moving to Serpent Society spec books. That money is always being moved. Now, I realize that there's different things people can be spending their money on based on particular interests. I know Golden Age collectors are different than modern collectors, but in a general macro view, that is generally how the hobby works. It has certain eyes and attention on any given book in any given moment. And I think we might reset to a little bit of that behavior here in this current market, because we only have so much attention, right? The market can only bear so many hot speculative books at any given moment in time. I mean, in 2021 and 2022, there were so many people in the hobby that the floor values could be, held up and elevated because there were that many people that were invested in whatever speculative book was potentially coming, first appearance of Galactus, or first appearance of, Abomination, or first appearance of, Blade. Those particular books always had a subset of collectors that were thinking about them and speculating on them, talking about them. And now we've had so much churn that the market can only see those things when they're 6 inches in front of them. And so I kind of wanted to show you guys a little bit of what I've been seeing out there in terms of some of these auctions and how there will always be a moment in time when the market either misses a book or sees a book. And this is going to be where you start to see prices reset or return to normal, so to speak, with any particular book. Now, I want to bring up Fantastic Four number 49. This is a book that I personally have been watching. If you guys saw my, Christmas wish list for 2023, this is one of those books that I traded away in my scam. I know that I wanted it back, and I've personally been looking for that 7.0 grade. Now, the 7.0, why I want that one in particular is because it is above the grade curve, which is a video that I'll probably do at some point in time. But this is one of those books, as we've been doing our silver index here. In 2020, this was a $1,000 book, maybe an $1,100 book, maybe a $1,200 book, depending on how you want to kind of break it down. But that's kind of where this book was sitting at, before this kind of speculative 2021 boom. It shot all the way up to, 4,000, 3,000, high 2,000s, et cetera, et cetera. And so far has corrected back down to prices like maybe 2,100 here, a 2,000 here, a 2,200, and maybe a 1,975. But to me, that still is a little too high above the trend line for this particular book, which to me suggests that the market still has eyeballs on this one, right? People are still thinking about this one to some degree. In fact, I was watching a Comic Link auction, and I thought that this one maybe was going to be a little bit of a steal, but no, lo and behold, it did go for $22.50 just the other day. But coming up this weekend here at Heritage, maybe I'm shooting myself in the foot because I might want to bid on this thing, but now you guys are going to be aware of it. There's another 7.0 that hits the market, currently sitting at 700. We'll see what that one goes for. But the point I'm making with bringing this up is that, at a certain point in time, there is going to be a moment when the market no longer has eyes on this book. I mean, that is already true of certain grades. If we're going down the scale and we're looking at, some of those 3.0s and some of those 2.0s, the market definitely has started to look away from some of those things. But there will be a time when the market takes its eyes off this book. And that'll be the time for me to strike. I am remaining very disciplined in my belief that at some point, all books, specifically that of Silver Age and Bronze Age books, based on the indexes that we've been putting together, based on this level of book, maybe not always for some of the mega keys that have even less of a print run than this one. My projection is that this book should be going back down to, say, 1,500, 1,600. Something of that price window, I think, would be more in line to what this book will eventually reset to. That is still my thesis, and I'm going to have to stick to that and use that patience and trust the models that is what's going to happen in this calendar year. Now, there might be a time when, the book comes my way and is sitting at that $1,700, $1,800 level, and I'm like, yeah, I just want it. And that's totally fine. Like, if you want to overspend a little bit on a book just to have it in hand now, you still get to enjoy it for that time that you own it. So, it doesn't always have to be that you have to time the market, you have to time the bottom. But, based on what we're seeing, if there is a cataclysmic, event in the global economy, then, we might be testing some of those prices that dip below even, the model of the index that I've been putting together. Like, we might be going to those 2018 prices. That's certainly possible. I mean, we never really know, if people need to liquidate. I'm still a little more on the bullish side in terms of where I think prices are going to steady at, because I do think that there's still just more holders in the market today than there were, holders in 2018, 19, and 20. So I do think that those books will at least be able to be somewhat resistant. And as I've been doing those projections with Silver and Bronze Age, we've seen that those indexes at least have been able to hold the floor some, whereas the Copper Age one, I can see how that one was drastically inflated. And that's the one where I think those books might be in a little bit more of trouble. But let me carry on a little bit with this kind of market attention and eyeballs thing. Here I think is a good example of a book that the market has taken its eyes off of. And now we are finally starting to see this book hit those trend lines that it should have been hitting. So I'll just pull up this particular grade right here, the 3.0 range. This was a book that in 2020 was selling around that $1,600 price point, maybe $1,900, depending on, any given sale, any given day. So you would expect that this book should be back at that $2,000 price point, maybe $2,100, $2,200, something like that. Well, for a long time, it was sitting well above that. It was easily hovering around the $3,000 price point. And we did see one low sale, $1,500 here, but that was for a faded cover. So we kind of have to dismiss that particular one right there. But finally here in this last Comic Link auction, this was another book I was watching, and we finally saw it sell for $2,300. Now, one of the things to point out is that Comic Link, as far as the prices that these books sell for, don't actually get reported onto sites like Go Collect or GPA and things like that. So, as far as the, fair market value is concerned, it'll still take some time for this book to reset to where it should be selling at. But the point remains that I'm trying to show you guys that eventually, these books will slip through the cracks because the market can only be looking at any particular, book at any particular moment in time. And if we are, in a current week where everyone is talking about, The Last of Us or The Mandalorian or whatever the case is, people have their eyes off of the prize of that first appearance of Wolverine, second appearance of Wolverine. You guys know what I mean. But I think we're at a really interesting time right now as far as where we are in the market. It's, a lot of moving parts, right? We, on the one hand, we have things like, the macro economy going down and a sort of a reset to normal and quantitative tightening and all those sort of things, removing the ability for people to be buying up all of these collectibles. And that's kind of why they're resetting in prices. And then on the other hand, we have things like, oh, the MCU sucks and it's going down and this, movie is terrible, et cetera, which, I agree with some of those criticisms. But whether that's true or sort of not true, I mean, whatever the case is, you're removing a certain subset of demand that would be there for books because of the fact that the properties aren't very good. And actually, I kind of want to go on a little bit of a tangent town right now with you guys, because tangent town takes me to this idea of movie speculation and kind of what I think is sort of lost in this idea of what speculation is or was, or at least in terms of what I think about when I think about speculation. A lot of people think that, the speculation thing is stupid. Why would you buy a character based on a movie? Well, if your idea is that you're going to buy a book based on, a movie and just flip it due strictly to the speculation, well, that's one thing. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're going to be a winner, sometimes you're going to be a loser in that particular situation. But one of the things I think is kind of lost on a lot of the discussion of the nuance of speculation is this idea of, will people be converted into holders if this particular character re-solidifies themselves in pop culture? I think that is the thing that, I think about mostly in terms of speculation. I mean, Marvel Spotlight 5, first appearance of Ghost Rider, fantastic book. Ghost Rider, one of the great Marvel characters of all time. There was a time in the, early 90s when Ghost Rider was probably the fifth most popular character, right? I mean, remember at that time, it was probably Spider-Man, X-Men, Wolverine, and then Punisher, Ghost Rider, right? Like those were the top characters. So the point is that any moment in time, these tier of characters they're on a sliding scale. They can be shifted up and down in the market. And that has a lot to do with what is going on in pop culture, whether it be current comic books or it be an animated series. I mean, a lot of people like to hate on the fact that the MCU makes characters popular, but those same people are people who grew up on the X-Men animated series and their favorite characters are X-Men. So it's the same thing, right? I mean, whatever is happening in those pop culture markets has an effect on, converting people into holders, making the demand side of the supply and demand equation, higher than the supply, and in fact, raising the value of the book. So when we talk about the speculation and what is to come, I mean, do I think that when Silver Surfer shows up in the MCU, assuming the movies are somewhat decent, and, I think eventually they'll figure it out and get somewhat decent, do I think that those characters in pop culture is going to convert people back into holders of books like FF48 and 49? Yeah, I do think so. I mean, and I'm talking about characters that, generally speaking, are legacy characters. So this is sort of where I think the nuance of speculation gets lost or whatever. Do I think that the Serpent Society is going to be converted into, a bunch of, or there's going to be people converted into a bunch of holders of the Serpent Society? Well, I mean, maybe a little bit as sort of a fun to have book just to have in the PC, but I'm not necessarily saying that this book is going to take you to the moon. It's really about the characters who at one point were top tier and have sort of fallen out of the limelight a little bit. But we know that those characters really are some of the most popular amongst all of the superheroes out there, right? I mean, so that's one of the things you have to think about. It's not just this idea of this character is going to show up, therefore the book is valuable. It's this character is going to show up, and if they can capture the audiences and the culture, there's going to be a lot of people converted into holders. So that's my little tangent as far as market awareness. And I guess I can kind of end the video as far as that is concerned and talk about like this idea of, we might be going back to a world where the market can only look at one place and one time, right? You got to buy eggs today. You got to buy comic books. I can't think about comic books. I got to buy eggs. You got to buy M&M books. You got to buy Serpent Society. I can't think about, Serpent Society. I got to buy M&M. You got to buy Mandalorian, or you got to buy Galactus. I don't know. Star Wars is on Disney Plus. Therefore, I'm going to buy Star Wars. And I think that could be something that we start to return to here in this calendar year. And not to say that we're going to reset to sort of peak trailer hits. Now everybody wants that character in the trailer, but it does begin to tip the scale to where can the market look at any given time, and do those media properties start to shine a spotlight in certain directions, thus forcing people in those directions. I think that is possible here in this coming year. Anyways, that's all for this video. That was me talking about eggs versus comic books. Tough choices are going to have to be made, and you're going to have to decide where your attention can go at any given moment in time. And if there's books that you're looking for, you're going to have to know that the market is going to have attention on certain things, and then they're not going to have attention on certain things. And when the market looks the other way, that's when you need to turn to the thing that you actually really want, whether it be a FF49 or a first appearance of the Serpent Society. Anyways, that's all I got. Go buy some eggs. Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content. I'll see you in the next video.